manner that is fruitful and gainful to you as well. So, colleagues, can we now go to item number 3, the proposed agenda, and see if we are happy to adopt the agenda as it is? By show of hands, colleagues. Good, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Mbungose, Mr. Bia. I don't know what my screen is not showing. But Walter, in this case, you're going to have to just help me to check if we have all of the people who are confirming, because I'm using the same PC or screen for this. But I confirm that members are happy to adopt the agenda as it is. Can we then move to item number 4, the declaration of interest on these regulatory items? Any declarations of interest? If anyone wants to raise it now, a verbal one, please do so. None. If not, can we then ensure that we sign the declaration of interest forms that are in the pack? We are then going to move to item number 5, and item number 5 is the report from the chairperson of the Electricity Subcommittee, Regulator member primarily responsible for electricity regulation, Mr. Gumede. Mr. Gumede, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to you again and to the members as well as the colleagues who are in the meeting. Chairperson, the first item that we're going to be dealing with is item 5.1, which is the application for a transmission license by the National Transmission Company South Africa, SOC Limited. Just to assure members that these were posted on the 19th, and they actually reflect on the board pad. They are time-stamped. The purpose of this submission is to request the ELS is here to request that the energy regulator approves it approves the granting of the transmission license to the NTCSA or NTC. We tend to use those two words interchangeably. As a bit of background, on the 29th of October 2019, the Minister of Public Enterprises published a roadmap for Eskom in a reformed electricity supply industry, a paper outlining the strategic steps for the unbundling. The roadmap clearly states that the establishment of a new transmission entity is a keystone in Eskom reform. The National Transmission Company South Africa SOC Limited, in short NTC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Eskom Holdings, was established as per the government objectives and in line with the Department of Public Enterprises roadmap. Just to indicate that the NTCSA had applied for 3 licenses as a bundle. However, these licenses were all processed or are going to be processed in line with the prescripts of ERA and in accordance with ERA. That is, the 3 licenses are actually handled separately. So we are here today just to deal with the transmission license. In respect of the transmission license, NTC has applied to perform the following functions, some of which are licensable. In fact, it's just the operation, which is the second one, which is the operation of the transmission network. That one is licensable at this stage. The others are not licensable, but they are deemed to be part of the transmission system. They have applied for a systems operator license to actually perform the function of a systems operator, the functions of a transmission network service provider, the functions of a transmission system planner, and a function of a grid code secretariat. According to NASA Section 10, the application went through a full public participation process, which included a public hearing. The public hearing was held on the 11th of April 2023, and NTC, Salga, Outer, Ms. Leader Peterson, and SFC made oral presentation during the public hearing. All presenters supported the application and emphasized that the unbundling of Eskom must not be too costly to the public, while SALGA indicated that municipalities must be treated the same as Eskom distribution. On the 4th of July 2023, at the ELS subcommittee meeting, members raised a number of questions and comments, which are tabulated in the table that is attached. Just highlight a few issues that were raised. Firstly, there was an issue raised about the liquidity of the concerns around the liquidity of NTC, and this question is addressed under section 6.7 of the RFD, pages 36 to 40. And then, of course, the other issue that was raised was whether will the applicant favor Eskom generation facilities than other IPPs. The answer to that is no, and that is explained in the it's a condition of license. There was a query about the ambiguous determination of the terms or the term of the license for transmission, and this was expanded properly in the RFD now. And the proposed term of license is now 25 years, in accordance with the average years of the average years of the assets of the NTC assets. Some of them may last longer, others a lot shorter, but on average, it's about 25 years. So the license itself, term of the license was then aligned to that. A further question was, does exclusion of trading from transmission license exclude does the trading of license of exclusion from a transmission license excludes the consideration of separate trading license, or does transmission license exclude trading? And it was also indicated that the ERA is very explicit. It in terms of how it defines the transmission, and that the actual definition in ERA was the one that which was taken into account. Chairperson, I'll take the rest of the other issues as been read, and apologies to members that may have not had an opportunity to go through this, and then go to the recommendations, which are on paragraph 6. Which is basically ELS is recommending that ER approves the National Transmission Company, South Africa SWOC Limited, that it be issued with a transmission license with license conditions, with the conditions of license attached, and that it approves that ER also approves the reasons for decisions for the transmission license, and also approves the fabrication thereof. Chairperson, there are some gremlins that have that were noticed, so I'll just go through that and correct and request that they be corrected. On page 18, the overstamped page 18. We would like to there's a word missing there on paragraph 6.5.3. We need to include a word provide under paragraph 6.5.3. So it should then the license that paragraph should then read the licensee shall provide access to the grid on a non-discriminatory basis. So that's that one. Number 2 on page 19, also to request that on paragraph 7.3.1 that the word generating in the second line there, that it be deleted, just to penalize entities that do not perform as contractually agreed, not just generating entities. So we propose that we delete that generation. And then on page 35, paragraph 3.10, it's just a slight grammar there, just to say that it's not is, but is are. That is the TSO. Let me just read it properly on page 35. Apologies, Chair. On page 35, the second line is that in which all but 2 of the TSOs are. So that it's not is, but it's are. Just a grammar. And then on page 56 is the last we like to request on paragraph 5.10.36 that we delete subparagraph F. So on page 56, and go to page 56, Chair. Just apologies, coming to an end. Is that there is a line there under paragraph 5.10.36. There is a bullet there, F, which is regulation and load following, which makes no sense. It was a gremlin, so we can actually we request that be deleted. That would be all, Chairperson. I hand back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you for your summary of this and explanation. And really, I was hoping that you would also do say that this is a milestone decision in the sense that we have always had one ESCOM with everything, and the fact that now we are starting a transmission company is a milestone on its own. Colleagues, may I then request if you have any questions, comments, or enhancements that you would want to be made on this document, if you could please indicate by raising your hand. And Walter, unless you are seeing any hands at all, Mr. Svande?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to Mr. Gumede and the team. Indeed, it is a milestone, Chair, and as the regulator, I think we are playing our part and should make sure that we contribute to shaping the structure of the industry going forward. And that whatever decision we make, it will be for the best interest of the industry and the country. Chair, the first question that I had, perhaps Mr. Gumede has responded to it, but it was around the term of the license. Seeing that there was still it was still undecided as to whether it's going to be 15 or 20 years, but I see that it's now aligned to the average useful life of assets and pegged at 25. So I think I'm fine with that. And then going to page 9, and I think it might help perhaps just to have a list of acronyms there. I think I saw them elsewhere, but if you read the license, we use quite a number of acronyms there, and perhaps it might assist us to have a list and an explanation of those. But if I can go through some of the definitions and interpretation, starting on page 10. So there's a definition of customer, which is a legal entity that contracts with the licensee for the provision of transmission services. I'm fine with that, but following that, you have a definition of customers. And ordinarily, you would think that customers is a plural of customer. But if you look at the definition, it says means the customers who will be supplied by licensee referred to in Schedule 3. But then Schedule 3 is just a list of activities to be performed by the licensee. Your system operator activities and the like. So I'm not sure whether we are happy with that definition of customers. More so if it confuses the previous definition of customer. Perhaps we may want to find another term to perhaps define the activities in Schedule 3. But like I said, the Schedule 3 is actually the activities to be performed by the National Transmission Company. Maybe some clarity there, Chairman. The same goes with the next definition, delivery point, which is fine. But again, if you look at the definition further down of what a point of delivery is, again, for me, I think maybe we may want to just make sure that we don't, or maybe that it's clear that delivery point is different from point of delivery, and that the two are not confused. And then if you go to interconnected power system, and that's on page 11, it says the IPS consists of, the third bullet says, power stations connected to the transmission system. Now, I'm not sure whether that should have been power stations or power systems. Okay, maybe if that can be clarified, because if you consider what the licensee is supposed to be responsible for, it includes the maintenance and operation of various systems. So I'm not sure if we include power stations, whether that then means that the licensee is also responsible for the maintenance and operation of power stations, which I'm not too sure is entirely correct. But maybe colleagues can clarify whether power stations was meant to be power systems. And then I think I've touched on point of delivery. And then under transmission system, so we define it as all lines and substation equipment where the nominal voltage is above 132 kV. But if you check, I think it's table 5, which lists all lines. It also includes lines that are lower than 132 kV, and they are included as a transmission system. I do understand the definition here that we exclude those that are below 132 and classify them as either a distribution system or part of the or as transformation equipment. But table 5 lists those under transmission system. Maybe if colleagues can also clarify that. And then the next issue that I wanted to check on page 16 under licensed activities. I just want to check what the view is with respect to market operator activities, because these are not included under what the National Transmission Company will perform. Is it not the intention that the licensee may in future also undertake market operator activities? And in any case, I think when you look at the activities of the system operator, it says the system operator must comply with the grid code and market rules. So I was just wondering what then is the role of the licensee when it comes to market operator activities, and whether we should not be forward-looking in our regulation and perhaps look at the market operator issues as well. Sorry, Chair. Okay, paragraph 5.4 on page 17. So in 5.3, we talk about non-discrimination and in terms of access to the transmission network, which is fine. But in 5.4, we then say any question as to the fairness or reasonableness of such terms shall be decided by the energy regulator. It's not clear what terms we are talking about. If it's terms of access to the network, we haven't said anything about that in 5.3. Perhaps we may want to just clarify so that 5.3 and 5.4 actually flow together, if that is the intention. But as they are, or rather as 5.4 is at the moment, it looks like a standalone, and it's not connected to any other provision. And then 5.5, we then refer to transmission service agreements with the generators, suppliers, importers, exporters, and large customers. Maybe we may want to define large customers, just a suggestion, so that it's quite clear. And then in 6.5.3 on page 18, access to the grid on a non-discriminatory basis to, I think Mr. Gumede corrected that part where it should say should provide access to the grid on a non-discriminatory basis to ESCOM generation IPPs. Chair, I'm not sure whether we should be, specifying, ESCOM generation and IPPs, because in the rest of the of the document, as well as the license, we talk of generators in general, and without specifying whether it's ESCOM generation or IPPs. And maybe we should do the same, unless of course there's a specific reason why we are specifying ESCOM generation and IPPs. And then from page 20, I think there are certain responsibilities for NERSA that I mentioned there in 8.2, 8.3. I guess the question that I had there is perhaps just to make sure that we are ready in terms of what we are supposed to provide. For instance, the methodology for determining use of system charges and the like, so that as soon as the licensee is ready to start, at least on our side, we should be ready.
Sorry, Mr. Sbanda, I know that you're saying it must be clarified, but I was also hoping you would also just indicate because 8.2 in my board pack, the licensee shall report. I know that we are meant shall report. I'm sure you just read it like that, but if it can be corrected as well.
Yes, sorry, Chair, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, you still have the floor, Mr. Span.
Thank you, Chair. And then on page 21, 12.2, the licensee must keep original commercial agreements or copies of these documents at its premises. I'm not sure, Chair, whether we should be making this kind of requirement in an age of technology, and perhaps what we should be saying is that they should keep documents in line with their document management policy, whatever it is. But I'm not sure whether we should be insisting that documents should be kept at premises. I mean, some of these probably would last for 15, 20, 25 years, and I'm not sure whether we should be making that kind of requirement. But as long as when they are required, they should be made available. But colleagues can perhaps clarify that. Sorry, Chair, for taking long. Page 22 on investigations. The regulator shall, at its own instance, on receipt of a complaint, investigate complaints of discrimination regarding tariffs or conditions of license. Now, it seems to me that we are actually limiting investigations to only cases of discrimination. If you read 17.1 and 17.11, and that discrimination only relates to tariffs or conditions of access. Yet, in paragraph 17.3, after an investigation, we may refer a report to the NPA. So it suggests that investigations may be wider than issues of discrimination. So perhaps we may want to just revise that part so that we don't limit ourselves in terms of the kind of issues that we may want to investigate. They may go beyond just, discrimination issues. Chair, on page 54, paragraph 5.10.30, I'm not comfortable with that whole paragraph, Chair, where we talk about the debt issues of the licensee, and then we make a statement there that these are not electricity economic regulatory in nature, and that they are not within the jurisdiction of the energy regulator. We make and that the ERA does not empower the regulator to make decisions on these matters. Well, we may not necessarily make decisions on the debt issues of licensees, but we do certainly take those into account in our decision-making processes. So I'm not comfortable with the way that we've written this particular paragraph, actually all of that paragraph, Chair, because we do indeed, for instance, when we look at the impact of tariffs and the like, we do consider things like your interest cover ratios, your debt cover ratios, and the like. So I'm not entirely comfortable with that paragraph. I'll be happy if we probably just delete the whole of it. I think the rest of what we have said before that, I'm fine with that, but the statements that we're making in 5, 10, 30, they are not comfortable with those, Chair. And perhaps lastly, on page 120, it seems that there are other transmission facilities, one of which is licensed, but then we say that there are others that are not licensed. And it worried me that there are transmission facilities that we are aware of out there, and they are not licensed. And what is our position on that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sibanda. And I didn't see any other hand because I would like us, if we have questions and these corrections, to do them now, so that when Mr. Gumede comes back with the team, they respond to all of the questions. Can I confirm that there's no other questions from the members? Mr. Gumede, can we just deal with the Mr. Sibanda, can you just help me with the last one around the unlicensed? I just want to record the page accordingly.
Chair, it's on page 120. There's a table of deliberations. I think it was at a workshop. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. I will get to that. Colleagues, it doesn't look like there's any other question, but had some of the things, but I think Mr. Sibanda, you've covered me with the delivery point and the interconnected system and the customers, because I was going to suggest that maybe we should try and use the definitions that are in, or if we are customize at least the definitions that are in the Electricity Regulation Act, as we have done so with some of those license conditions, especially the part around investigations. I think we have just copied what the Act is there, but the enhancements that Mr. Sibanda is proposing are enhancements we must make. And before you answer, I also would want us to maybe use the language of the Act when it comes to what are we giving to Eskom. We are issuing a license to operate a transmission facility, and if we could change that, the others maybe we can deal with them and maybe allow for other members to come in. I do have areas that we need to sort out in this submission. Mr. Kumet, can you start with Mr. Sibanda's points?
Thank you, Chairperson. I will come back to the milestone because I think it's something that I'd forgotten to mention, and thank you for reminding me. But I think really I just want to thank both yourself and Mrs. Sibanda here on the enhancements. And in fact, the challenge with definitions is that most of us, when we read, we just tend to go straight into the main body of the document and not read it as lawyers should, which is where we're supposed to start in terms of those definitions. We really value the inputs, and those enhancements that have been suggested will definitely be taken into account. And I think, Chair, you've guided properly in the sense that where possible, if there is a definition in the Act, we should use that definition in the Act. And even the language, as you say, even in terms of the license, I thought we may have struggled a little bit in terms of coining what this thing's about. It is about operation of a transmission system because it's meant to align 100% with what is in the Act. We are guided by ERA, the existing one. So we need to be able to make reference to everything that flows out of ERA. And thank you for that guidance. And that will be taken into account. We will definitely need to do a comprehensive overview of this. Normally, before we publish the RFD, we'll give the licensee, the applicant, an opportunity to apply for areas of confidentiality, if any. That gives us time to also, as we incorporate that input from the applicant, that we also go through this, in detail to make sure that the words that are in there are what they are meant to mean, and they are what is actually prescribed by the Act. And we apologize profusely for any of the misstatements that may have accrued. For instance, there's an issue that was raised by Mr. Sibanda around investigations. Clearly, we should make reference. There is a section in the Act that talks to investigations. I think rather than limit it, that's how we should write it. We should refer to what the Act is saying so that we broaden this thing as widely as possible. Yes, of course.
Mr. Commander, sorry to interject. I think what Mr. Sibanda was saying is that we mustn't limit it to that. But when you look at the Act, if you go to the Act, I don't know if maybe I have an old one, it kind of just talks about those two things and has the asterisk to say that other things must be added.
Well, there is Section 32 as well, Chair. So, all I'm simply saying is that we will look at it broadly. The Act is very. So, for instance, there are issues where there are issues of that might require the tribunal to be invoked or to be formed to deal with certain matters. But there are issues that might be criminal in nature. But the point is, Section 32, I think, will cover all of that. But what I'm simply saying is that, Chair, we will be guided by the Act. So the Act is very clear on all of those issues. But if but the Section 21 issues are actually very explicit in respect of the network operators. So perhaps that's why they were elevated. But we'll actually do that properly and invoke the correct clause in the Act. We'll be guided by LAS on that. But Chair, maybe just to the point I'm trying to raise, though, Chair, is that the most of the issues raised by Mr. Sibanda, for instance, it's proper guidance, and we appreciate that. And some of them, it was just an oversight. For instance, the issue of customer and customers. Customers, clearly, we need to delete that. It makes no sense, and it's even worse because even if that Schedule 3 may work for generators or may work for even distributors, I'm not even sure whether it works for distributors either, because of the vastness of customers that come into. So that Schedule 3 might not necessarily be applicable to this. So, but again, guided by the law. So we will delete that. But all of the points that are raised, I would ask the colleagues to clarify Table 5 in terms of what was meant. But for me, the one point that I did want to raise, Mr. Sibanda, you raised the issue of market operator. In drafting this, we were cognizant of the fact that there is an amendment process there is an amendment bill that is in the pipeline. However, unfortunately, as NERSA, we can only be guided by the existing laws. So there are certain things that are at this stage not licensable, like central purchasing, which will possibly be licensable in the future. So what we had then looked at was to then say, whatever that we were then in analyzing this license and coming up with the conditions, we were cognizant of the fact that there may well be, or most likely be, a requirement by the same entity, the transmission operator, to also play as a market operator. So whatever that we were then doing was not to explicitly deal with the market operations, because that's not in our current act. But in whatever that we were doing, we had to look into the future and say, what would be the functions of a market operator? Would whatever that's been applied for instance, be in line with an independent market operator in the future, or an independent systems operator in the future? So we looked at that, but we're guided wholly by ERA. And hence why what I'm then suggesting is that even in our definitions, we should actually look in and make sure that we are all our definitions are actually aligned with ERA. All of the other issues, as indicated, I think you are correct. Even with that paragraph 5.10.30, your uncomfortability with it, I think it makes sense. We will definitely have a look at that, and we'll incorporate all of the issues that we raised. However, before the team comes in and explains Table 5, which I think Mr. Kumalo does explain fairly well, I did want to say, yes, indeed, the creation of the NTCSA is a major milestone in South Africa. Unfortunately, as was noted by the number of participants at the public hearing, it is not well understood. So there will be a need for proper communication with the public, where we explain what this is in detail, what it is not, what its obligations are, what opportunities it creates, especially for the CNI, the commercial industrial groups, people that might be, for issues of willing data or access to grid preferences. The fact that, for instance, it is still under Eskom Holdings, to what extent that may affect its independence and so forth and so forth. So those things we would need to actually have an extensive engagement with stakeholders for them to fully comprehend and understand what this creation of an independent transmission systems operator means. In the words of the DG at the presidency, for instance, and when this was discussed, as she said, for those that have been around, and since the white paper on energy was published in 1998, this would be one of the successes that was envisaged there, that perhaps never actually taken time to actually unravel, but it is a major milestone for the electricity industry in South Africa and prepares South Africa for even if we were then going to have a market, an electricity market in the future. This is step number one. Everything hangs on this. But Chair, before I hand over back to you, can I then ask Mr. Khumalo to explain Table 5, please? Thanks. Or Mr. Mavuso or Tamai, please, just if you can guide.
Thank you, Mr. Kumede. Mr. Mavuso or Mr. Tamai.
Thanks, Chair. Tamai has already provided some writing on the chart. But Tamai, maybe it would be better if we could just come in and explain to the members. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, some of these power stations are on some of these lines, they are on the power corridors, which actually transmit power from the main generation hub, especially in Mpumalanga, to load centers in the coastal areas. And you'd find that some of these substations are already being in the process of being upgraded to 400 kV or above. I've given an example of Buffalo substation, which is fed from Neptune at 400 kV. But when it goes to Buffalo, it's at 132 kV. But that substation, the whole substation, is being upgraded to 400 kV. And it's also connected to an OCGT power station in East London, Portrex, which have got to be controlled by the system operator for the control of the grid. And we also have some of the lines that are just dedicated to transport power at 132 kV from the generation facilities, especially the IPPs. They generate at 132 kV, but they have got to transport that energy to main transmission substations, 400 kV, where it gets stepped up and then it goes to customers. So it would not work to have such lines to be controlled by the distribution. They have got to be controlled by the system operator, because it also you have got to deal with the curtailment events and so forth. Yeah, I think in short that's my response. Thanks.
Tamai, thank you for the explanation. And I think the explanation is there. The enhancement that Mr. Sibanda is requesting is that in the definition, we talk about what these lines are. What we need to have in the definition is something that then says excluding or including, and we can say that all of the lines that are in Schedule X, for instance, so that when you read it knowing that it's 132 and there are other exclusions. You don't read 132 and you get into the document, there are other numbers that are not 132. For other people who may not be dealing with this on an everyday basis. So the enhancement, in the way I understand, is that put something that then refers someone to that schedule that explains the other things in that definition at in the front. Are you following me, Mr. Hore, and are you aligned, yes, Mr. Gumed and Mr. Sibanda, on my proposal?
Chairperson, we are quite clear, and I think really as we finalize this, the actual license, it's such input that to be invaluable, especially as we say, we need to be able to read this through the eyes of somebody who may not be doing this on every day. Yes, still guided by the law, because the challenge here was that the law is very specific. It's in terms of how it defines transmission. So, but we need to be clear and also, do this well within the powers of the regulator, to not give ourselves powers to legislate. But it is very clear, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kumet. Mr. Sibanda, you are fine with that as well?
Yes, I'm fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. May I make a suggestion, because I also don't want us to take away this moment, steal the thunder from this. Like I had indicated, I also had things that I would have wanted to be relooked at. because we've put in these things, and I think we can say the regulator is approving this subject to this, but maybe that's not the smartest way of doing it. So may I modify what we are going to approve, that we must approve the license to operate, and we don't take that away. And then I think we have to accept that in the license conditions, there is still some work to be done, and that we are not going to be approving that, and therefore the reasons for the decision would also be changed like that. But I don't want us to really now go into some of these discussions without really savoring the moment that we're approving a transmission system. Would that be acceptable to you, Mr. Gumede?
Chairperson, I think it would be, as long as it doesn't create, because unfortunately with this there are other parties like the funders that would need to be clear in terms of the decision of the energy regulator. As long as it doesn't affect the validity of our decision, and that our decision may well change, it's one thing to approve with enhancements, and maybe to then request that the RFD be brought back to ER. I'd be far more comfortable with that. I think also in terms of the funders that may, or the other parties that are in terms of decisions and actions that need to then happen henceforth, so that they are assured that the decision is final. I think I would request, Chair, that we approve it with the enhancements proposed, but with the request, an explicit request, that the refined RFD and license be brought back to ER for further review or something. But for me, Chair, the only thing is that what we are saying is that this document has got economic value, and if there's any doubt in the minds of whoever is gonna be in receipt of this, that there may be things that may change, and they may change the substance, it may not carry the weight that we want it to carry.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. For me, I don't think that it is going to change the substance. It is, first of all, the part around the definitions, because I was really going to hop on that. Secondly, it's really the other part around how we package the things that we're saying there. And it may be a question of opinion, or style of doing things, but it wouldn't change. And I just think that even for the comfort of the rest of the regulator members, if we say we're approving, and the license conditions we are approving that they must be changed and come back to the regulator, it's still, if it's still going to come back to the regulator, it's still not approved. So I think it is smoother to say we're approving the license, and we will provide the license conditions in the shortest possible time if the applicant requires us to do that. But approving and saying that it must be changed and it must still come back, it's still not an approved document from where I sit, Mr. Gumede.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say, ordinarily when we approve this, is if, for instance, there have been enhancements which have been provided by members, those enhancements will then be effected in the documents with that understanding. But it may then thereafter, the ER may then want to see the final document which incorporates all of those enhancements. But all of those things were discussed in public, and therefore whoever reads the document will have known about this. So my discomfort, Chair, is that if we issue a license but we don't issue the conditions of license, it's not the license is incomplete, because the powers that are given to the licensee are actually embodied in the license conditions. So for me, my request would be, if we can grant the license with on condition that all of the enhancements that have been provided, and further enhancements which are not going to be changing the actual substance and of the decisions, will then be effected. I'll be comfortable with that. But then I'll then say, if we then request that the enhanced RFDs and license conditions or license be brought back to ER, I'd also be comfortable with that. But at least it's quite clear for people out there that the decision of the ER is clear and has been made. And there is because without conditions, without clear conditions, the license the license itself has no meaning.
I agree, Mr. Kumete, with you that if it comes without the conditions, but I think we have just spoken about the enhancements that must be done. But let me give it to the other members. But for me, it would have been good if we really were to engage, but also for the sake of time, because some of these things are things that really should just have been done if this document had really gone through the quality check. But may I just check, Walter, you had your hand up?
Chair, my hand was meaning to support what or your view, in a sense that if the document is going to change materially, and members are not comfortable at this stage with how the document will look like then after the changes. I will support you, Chair, in a sense that we need to let the team enhance the document and it get reconsidered in its entirety. I'm stating this, Chair, looking at the fact that as ER, once we take a decision, we are not or will not be in a position to change our own decision, which will further prolong the process. So it is safer that way, Chair, I think, and I rest my case there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mabunda. May I check with the other members what your views are, your suggestions, members? Mr. Gomed, Mr. Mkize?
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to the presenters. I've been following through because I'm a member of the ELS. I would rather go for the situation where we approve and then the RFD, as well as which will also include the conditions and everything, will then follow soonest, because we have done that before when we're looking at particularly the tariff decisions in this regard. And then there's a refinement which we can even have a special meeting to consider if time is of essence. And there are challenges as Mr. Kumete has highlighted the economic value of the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkize. Other members, see, can I really am now going to ask members one by one. So I'll start with you, Deputy Chair. I know that you had the issues with downloading the document, but your view on what is being recommended?
I think I'm happy with the recommendation, Chair. I'm comfortable with the path that we're taking. And yeah, so I am covered. Thank you. I support it.
I'm checking Mpungos on that, because we are saying that we are going to approve the issuing of the license to operate a transmission system. But what I was proposing is that we then indicate, we can even give Eskom a draft, then they will also help us to iron out things that we may be misaligned on, and then indicate that the license conditions and the reasons for the decision would follow.
Yes, I am happy with that proposal, Chairperson, that we do issue the license and then we highlight that the reasons for decision and then some of the conditions will follow at a later stage. Thank you.
Ms. Maseti?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I support that today we can take a decision to approve the license to operate the transmission system, and then the reasons for decision can come to the next meeting. But I'm not sure about the part of providing Eskom. I don't know which draft, whether it's draft of the RFDs without our approval. I think I will only be comfortable only when there's a decision of the energy regulator that then we send that to Eskom for confidentiality purposes. Then when it comes to the license conditions, proposed license conditions, I will support that. We can send that to Eskom to then have a look at the license conditions and indicate if they are happy with the proposed license conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Maset. I think for me it was the license conditions that that they can have a squeeze at, so as to know that we are all aligned. The RFD that they don't need to see our draft. CEO Advocate Stolen.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to Mr. Gumet and team for their submission. Chair, for me, I would also support the approval of the issuance of the license to operate the transmission system. And I was going to say that it should be subject to the enhancements that have already been made by members in terms of the license conditions. Whether those enhancements get done with or without ESCOM, I would not have a problem. However, whatever enhancements are made, if they have an impact on the decision, then they should also be enhanced accordingly. Because, Chair, for me, you can't have an approval and not have the proper recorded decision. The two goes together. And hence my proposal to say that let's approve subject to the enhancements that have been given in this particular meeting. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate Sitole. Mr. Mane.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning to you and colleagues. From my side, I do support the approval of the license, and that the license conditions can come back to ER for its approval. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mane. Mr. Spand.
Yeah, Chairperson, I think we can approve the license, and the RFD can follow later as we've done previously. In terms of the license conditions, I think perhaps in our communication it should be clear that we are attending to the enhancements that probably are not likely to change the substance of those conditions, so that we don't create any uncertainties in the market. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Spanda. And Mr. Beer. If we lost Mr. Beer, Mr. Mawunda.
Chair, it may appear so, as indicated when we opened the meeting, that she has some personal issues that she's dealing with. She'll be in and out.
Yeah. Mr. Gumete, in the past, I know that we have never issued a transmission system, but in the past, even in pipe gas, petroleum pipelines, and even in electricity, it is not uncommon. It was not uncommon, and I'm sorry that I'm bringing the past, but I think sometimes the past does help in making us understand that there's a precedence that has been created. And so in the past, it was not uncommon to say that here's your license and here are your draft license conditions. We would want you to go through them and indicate what you may be uncomfortable with or what. Not that it's going to change anything. And then when it comes back, we look at their conditions and we look at whatever views the affected party may have in this, and then we make the decision. And if you look at it for that matter, even in this case, for us, the license conditions are a decision. It may be argued that we have not tabulated our license conditions to affected parties for them to give us their inputs and that. So I think this route that I'm proposing is going to make it safer. And besides, for instance, had we just approved, I know there are enhancements that were made, even in the parts around the definitions, it was also not going to be a good showing by the regulator in light of this big thing that we're having. So for me, I still think that giving them a draft and saying, here are your draft license conditions, which have these enhancements, and then when it comes back with whatever inputs they would have, and that's what we would approve. I think that route is elegant and safer. Mr. Gumet.
Chairperson, I've heard the views of the members, which I respect. Can I request perhaps something in the middle that says, and I think you've kind of captured it, but perhaps it didn't come up the first time in that manner. That what we are then saying is that we issue the license with draft license conditions, which draft license conditions can then be communicated with the applicant, who can then comment on them and come back. There is a major reason for this, Chair, because in the manner in which this license was applied for, it was bundled with other licenses, but the conditions of license cover some of the issues that were raised by the applicant. So we would not want to create any doubt in that respect. But the point of issuing the license with the draft license conditions, I think for me makes a lot of sense. And then we can further enhance the RFD, and the RFD can come back. But can I then request as a second, my second request as part of that package, that we then put those on a round robin approval, so that it doesn't have to wait for another meeting of the regulator, and also I guess linked to that, and that we have an explicit approval to actually bring the RFD not via ELS again, but that RFD comes directly to ER. So those would be my request, Chairperson, so that at least we can bring finality to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. I think I'm aligned with that, and I think we are going to then really make get into the recommendations and move on. I know that it would have looked odd if we had just approved the milestone in 2-3 minutes, and I think we have taken enough time. We have really demonstrated that we're applying our mind to it. So if we can go back to the recommendations now, Walter, and they will be altered. And take into consideration what Mr. Gumede has also proposed, that the rest of the things that have to come back will come back with via a round robin. I just want to get to, is it page 6 that has, I know it's number 6 that has
it's page 6. It's page 6, yes, correct, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. So recommendations, I think 6.1 then is altered to say that we are approving that the National Transmission Company of South Africa Limited, NTC, be issued with a license to operate a transmission facility. And then the second one, the second part of that is that we are also approving that they would be given draft license conditions for them to comment on. And then I think the other two, then we'll have to modify them accordingly. Colleagues, by show of hands, if I may see if you are in support of what I've proposed. Ms. Maseti? Mr. Sbanda, Mr. Mane, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkhize, Advocate Sitole, I think we have a decision. Thank you very much, colleagues. Mr. Gumede, please take us to 5.2.
Chairperson, firstly, just to thank the members for the decision on 5.1. Indeed, it is a milestone for South Africa. 5.2, Chair, is a follow-up, really, of a decision that was sought earlier on four other applicant or bidders in the same round. So I won't go into details with it, but in essence, Chair, we are here as the ELS to request that the Energy Regulator approve that Ingonyama Solar RF Pty Limited be issued with a generation license. As indicated, is part of the REAP program, and these the other five, the other applicants or the other generators which were part of bid window 6 were also considered by the Energy Regulator at its last sitting. This is the last one of that grouping. The application was considered by the ELS on the 4th of July 2023 and was recommended to the ER for approval without any enhancements. And the decision that is sought, Chair, is on page 3, which is which is to request that Ngonyama Solar RF Pty Limited be issued with a generation license. And then secondly, that We approve the PPA tariff of 54.8 cents per kilowatt hour. As it is sometimes it's in the manner in which it is presented does present challenges. That number of 548 rands per megawatt hour, but it's 54 cents. It's 54.8 cents per kilowatt hour as a base year in 2022, and then we approve the decision as well as the draft reasons decisions document attached here to as an HRP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gumede. Members, we have a submission in front of us, a recommendation by the ELS. Any questions, comments, or enhancements? I don't see any questions or hands up. So colleagues, may I take you then to page, I think start on page 2 to page 3, the recommendation 6.1 that we approve that the Ngonyama solar RF be issued with a license to operate a generation facility, and we approve the tariff of 548 rands per megawatt hour, and that we also approve the reasons for the decision that are in Appendix D. By show of hands, colleagues. But Ms. Masetti, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkize, Mr. Spanda, Ms. Mpungose, Ms. Semane, and Ms. Sibia. I think we have the decision. Walter, are you fine?
We do.
Anything? Thank you.
We do. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gumede, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. The next two, Chair, are actually fairly similar. With your permission, Chair, can I introduce both of them? Although then I'll then take us to the decision on 5.3 first and then 5.4 for the sake of time, because they are very, very similar and they were actually tackled in the same manner.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So the first one again is the ELS is here to request the ER to approve the draft decision and to concur with the Minister on the draft Section 34 determination for the procurement of 1,000 megawatts of new generation capacity from the cross-border procurement program, which is an ESCOM program, and to also approve the decisions, the decision associated therewith. Just as a way of background on this is that on the 1st of February 2023, NESA received the draft Section 34 determination to concur with the Minister to procure this 1,000 megawatts of new generation capacity. And again, new is going to be seen in the context of the new gen regulations of 2016, I think. So it also it does not necessarily just is about things that are totally 100% greenfield. That new generation capacity from the cross-border procurement program by ESCOM, and that was the Section 34 that was requested. The program is exempted by the Minister from complying with the IRP 2019 as per the letter attached by the Minister. The ELS did consider this submission, and after deliberation, that it then recommended that these two be brought before the ELS. I did want to just highlight, Chair, the one challenge that delayed this was that they needed to go for a public hearing, and the concern largely raised by the stakeholders was that in both these cases, the technologies that are going to be used are not specified. And there was, of course, the question that was raised around whether these need to follow Table 5 of the IRP, but as indicated, those are that these are exempted from that. But in the main, the concern was largely around the non-specifications in terms of the technologies that are going to be considered. But that has been indicated that it's not a prerequisite of this Section 34. And therefore, we are here, Chair, to then ask that ER approves or concurs with or approves the decision to concur with the Minister on the draft Section 34 determination for the procurement of 1,000 megawatts new generation capacity from the cross-border procurement program. Thanks, Chair. That's on the first one.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, there's a submission in front of us. Any questions, comments, or enhancements that we would want to propose? I do not see any hands, so with that, I will...
Chair, there's Mr. Sibanda.
Oh, Mr. Sibanda, thank you.
Sorry,
Mr.
Chairperson. Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Gumede. Yeah, I think apart from the technology question, which has been clarified that it's not a prerequisite, I also had a question in terms of the minimum capacity that can come from the region. I think with IPP is probably because we've done this for quite some time. It's probably, there's precedent in terms of what capacities to expect, but I don't know whether this also is left open-ended by design, or there should be some kind of minimum capacity that is to be specified, and perhaps in the determination obviously it will not be there, but I'm not sure if it's something that we should be querying. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Gumede?
Chairperson, I think it also falls into the same category as the specifications in respect of technologies. But I'll actually like to request the team to maybe provide, if they've got any additional information I may not have in this regard. Mr. Shozi, do you want to perhaps add anything to this?
Yes, Chair. I understand the question from Mr. Sibanda, but according to information I've read, there is no specification on the minimum capacity that will be brought. What I know is that the maximum is up to 1,000 megawatts. And then ESCOM will undertake that exercise to when they're engaging with the IPPs or the utilities on the other side in terms of getting up to that 1,000 megawatts. But I don't have that information unless Mr. Mkhize has. Thanks.
Mr. Mkhize, I think in this case, not Mr. Mkhize from the petroleum pipelines. Is this Willie Mkhize?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, Mr. Mkhize Jr.
Okay. Mr. Mkhize Jr.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I wonder, Chair, if you could just repeat the point. I could not get it very clearly.
The question was, is there any minimum capacity that has been specified for this? I know the maximum is 1,000, but Mr. Sibanda was asking if there's minimum capacity that has been specified.
No, Chair, there was no specification of a minimum. I think the 1,000 is basically what is being proposed, but it's not expressed as a minimum in the determination itself, which means it could be more or less the 1,000 in my estimation.
Mr. Mkhize, you are bringing another complication, because I think what we are talking about is that it's 1,000. So what Mr. Sibanda was saying, is there a minimum? So if it's 1,000, it's got to be 1,000 or less. It can't be, or whatever margins that we would be yeah. So it's
Yes.
going to be 1,000 max, but
yes, I would agree with that perspective, Chair. 1,000 or less, but the minimum would be 1,000, I guess.
Okay, Mr. Mkhize, maybe Can I come back to you, Mr. Kumete, and then I'll come to Mr. Sibanda, because the understanding, I think, Mr. Sibanda, what he wanted was whether there's a minimum capacity. And I think in our response back to, and as part of our concurrence, we have always been allowed to make additional comments. Yes, we concur in the way that we're required, but we make additional comments or suggestions or inputs that the minister must consider in the concurrence. But Mr. Kumet?
Chairperson, I did want to just stress that because unlike the RIP program where there may be specifications in terms of the minimum, even the maximum sizes in terms of the size of plants that can be tendered. In this particular case, it is explicitly quiet on that because of the fact that it could well be excess power from existing plants across the border or whatever. There is no specification. I think we would be going into the realm of speculation if we try to provide anything further than that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kumenten. Mr. Mkiza, I did see your hand.
Thanks, Chairperson. I'd just like to get to understand, because in my understanding at ELS is that there is no minimum stated, but because one may not be able to say foresee how little could be sourced from across the border. So hence, 1,000 megawatts was for me the maximum, because even in our concurrence, we're concurring to the pages to contribute towards energy security and accordingly up to 1,000 megawatts. So I see the 1,000 as a maximum in terms of our concurrence, with no minimum set, because one would really want to get as much as possible. That is my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkize, for that. Mr. Sibanda, are you comfortable that there are the reasons why there's nothing that has been put as the minimum, and the reason for that that has been provided? Are you happy that we can approve? Mr. Sibanda?
Chair, I think it makes sense, especially if we're considering the fact that it's probably this is excess power. I was just looking at it from an economies of scale perspective to say perhaps you may want to have a particular capacity, contributed. But if it's not possible, I think it's fine as is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Gumede, I just want to confirm that what we are going to approve is, or what we are concurring to, is what is on page, I think the overstamp page 3. Just that my PC has the standards of freezing, but it starts with the 1.1.1. So may you help me from your side to just read out what we're concurring to, and I'll ask the members to show if they're in support.
Thank you, Chairperson. What we are approving is on the overstamped or the green numbering number 2. What the ELS is requesting, that we are recommending that the ER approves the draft decision. Actually, maybe let me just read the actual decision. Sometimes it's on the overstamp page 3. Yes, correct, Chair. That the ER concurs with the minister that 1.1.1 that the new generation capacity must be procured or purchased to contribute towards the energy security, and in accordance up to 1,000 megawatts should be procured from the South African Development Community or SADC region from a range of technologies or sources. This program is implemented in order to close the widening energy gap as articulated in the Integrated Resource Plan for Electricity 2019 to 2030, published by government, as currently being experienced in South Africa. Number 1.1.2 is that the energy capacity shall be procured from a range of energy producers from the region. 1.1.3 that the range of energy producers from the region will either be utilities from the host countries or independent power producers that are legally operating within those host countries. 1.1.4, that the energy capacity shall be procured by Eskom Holdings, SOC Limited, and shall entail the procurement of the electricity through one or more processes that are fair, equitable, transparent, and cost-reflective, and two, processes that the form of which shall be determined by Eskom, and then B, that the conclusion of power purchase agreements in respect of electricity for which the duration will be agreed upon between Eskom Holdings and the energy producers from the region. 1.1.5, the electricity procured or bought shall target the South African grid as soon as reasonably possible, considering all relevant factors, including the prevailing energy security risks and the time required for efficient procurement. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, by show of hands, may we indicate if we're in support of this recommendation and or concurrence. But Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Gumede, Ms. Maseti, Mrs. Banda, Ms. Bia. Walter, please confirm if we have the decision.
We do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gumede, thank you. We have the decision, and I think you had indicated that 5.4 is of a similar nature.
Correct, Chairperson. 5.4 is of a similar nature, and the same participants in terms of the public hearing also they commented on this. But this particular one, Chair, is to request the ER to approve the draft decision and to concur with the Minister on the draft Section 34 determination for the procurement of 2,000 megawatts of new generation capacity from load shedding reduction program, again by Eskom Holdings. The decision, Chair, on this one again is on the overstamped page number 3. Chair, maybe I can just read it in for the record so that members can decide on to vote or not. But basically, we're requesting that the ER we are requesting the ER to concur that up to 2,000 megawatts of power should be generated from a range of energy technologies or sources in accordance with the short-term risk mitigation capacity allocated under heading Other for the years 2025 to 2028 in Table 5 of the Integrated Resource Plan for Electricity 2019. Number 2, that the new generation capacity shall be established from energy generated by independent power producers. And then 3, that the electricity produced from the new generation capacity shall be procured by Eskom Holdings SOC Limited and shall entail subparagraphs A and B. A, procurement of electricity through one or more processes that are fair, equitable, transparent, and cost-reflective, and the form of which shall be determined by Eskom. And B, that the conclusion of the PPAs in respect of the electricity, which PPAs shall be aligned with the short-term power purchase agreements. And then 4, electricity procured or bought shall target connection to the grid as soon as reasonably possible, taking into account all relevant factors, including prevailing energy security risks and time required for efficient procurement. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, if there are no questions, may I see by show of hands if we're in support of this decision? I've got Mr. Gumede, Mr. Spanda, Mr. Mkhize, Ms. Advocate Sitole, Mr. Mane, and Ms. Maseti. I think we have a decision, Walter. Thank you. Walter, please confirm. Mr. Mabunda.
Chair, we have a decision. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Gumete, if you can then take us to I think the round robins, item 5.6.
Chairperson, I actually made an error. There's 5.5. It's not two of those, that there were three of them. So the third one is just the emergency generation procurement program, also followed exactly the same process as the other two. But the decision that is sought on that one, and this one is also on the overstamped page. It starts from overstamped page 3, flows over to overstamped page 4. Chair, can I take that as read, Chair? But I actually had made an error on this one. I apologize for that. But the actual decision that is requested by ELS is the same as the other two. Thanks, Chair. We are on mute, Chair.
Apologies, I realize now. But I was requesting members to indicate by show of hands if they are in support of or approving the recommendation on 5.5. Yeah, I've got Mr. Kumete, Advocate Ms. Mpungose, Sphere. Thank you. I think we have it. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kumete. Next item.
Chair, thank you. This is the last item from me, item 5.6. Chair, this is here for, I think, is ratification of a round robin decision, but the actual and just to actually read the actual decision that was made on round robin for the record. It was just a confirmation of the approval by round robin of the draft reasons for decision documents on the concurrence with Section 34's, the ministerial determinations for the procurement of the 3,000 megawatt hours of combined cycle gas turbine and the 1,000 megawatts standard offer program by ESCOM. This decision was approved by 8 out of 10 members. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Who's the 10th member, Mr. Gumede?
Otherwise, because I meant to say 8 out of 9. Apologies.
Mr. Mabonde?
Chair, we have Mr. Kize Seniors, and perhaps we might want to address it.
Okay.
Apologies, it's a lingering hand. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. I thought you were the 10th member that Mr. Gumede was referring to.
Well, Chair, perhaps because we've got a casting vote in this meeting, so maybe I was counting you twice. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Mabunda, by show of hands, colleagues, can we note this round robin? I think we're required to note it, but I've got Ms. Mbungose, Mr. Mkize, Ms. Bias, Mr. Mane, Mr. Gumede, and Mr. Spanda. So thank you. It's noted. Ms. Maseti as well. Thank you. Colleagues, may we then move on to the next agenda item. This is now the report, agenda item number 6, report from the chairperson of the Piped Gas Subcommittee, regulator member primarily responsible for piped gas, Ms. Maseti.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I have only one report, which is the minutes of the meeting of the Pipe Gas Subcommittee held on 12 June 2023. Chairperson, there is nothing to emphasize on these minutes. They are here for noting. If there are any questions of clarity from the members, I will be happy to handle those. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Maseti. Members, any questions, comments, or things that you would need clarified on these minutes? None. By show of hands, colleagues, may we note them? Got Mr. Mkize, Mr. Spanda, Mr. Maseti, Mr. Kumete, Mr. Bia, and Mr. Mane. Thank you. I think we have the decision, Walter, or we are noting the minutes. Then, colleagues, may we move on to item number 7, which is the report of the petroleum pipelines subcommittee by the regulator member primarily responsible for petroleum pipelines, Mr. Mkhize.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings again to members, management and staff. I've got only one item here, which are the minutes of the previous meetings. Meeting number 172 of the 24th of March 2023, as well as meeting number 174 of the 3rd of May 2023. Both of them are 2 pages, and I will take them as read. I've got no matter to emphasize as such, but I'll wait if there are any questions thereon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Members, any points to clarify from those minutes? I don't see any hands, so by show of hands then, colleagues, can we indicate that we're noting these minutes? But Mr. Mane, Mr. Mpungose, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Spanda, and Advocate Sithole. Thank you. Walter, they are noted. Colleagues, unless I would have missed something, this is the point where we are now going to close the meeting and go to our close the session of the meeting. May I thank the members of the public who have been with us and following our deliberations. And as Mr. Gumede has said, and all of the members emphasized, I think we are happy as the regulator to have made our contribution to the reform and changes that are required in the electricity supply industry. And we thank you for your attention. We are now going to excuse you from our meeting, and the meeting is now going to be closed. Mr. Matega, may you confirm that you have closed the meeting? Colleagues, may I request that if